So today is our last class session, and we're highlighting some specifics in a shorter study guide. This is like a mini module. There's a study guide in references and an addendum. This is a pretty straightforward reference, and I would expect that you would read through it. And if you have any questions, you can reach out, but it's all pretty self-explanatory if you've been with us to this point. We've talked about Active Directory and how things can be extended in an Active Directory. And today we're going to engage the use of scripting out of the third student learning objective. And we'll show you how that works. So sometimes context helps. There is only one assignment that you need to complete, but it is an unusual assignment in that each of you will be granted remote access to your own system. So what you'll do is install a remote desktop app using the Microsoft Store. So basically, if you click into the Microsoft Store and then install remote desktop, it'll have a logo like this. You can also do the same on a Mac using the App Store from your Mac system. And once that's in place, you'll end up creating a connection. You'll click the Add button, and it'll prompt you to insert some information. In this case, if you're with the Crucian group, and the students in the Crucian group are Akeem, Kyrick, James, and Milrain, you'll be sharing a server for this final assignment. And the name of the server is called Perseus. And what you'll do is set up a connection to Perseus so that you log into Perseus. And the important part is that this first set of numbers is the IP address. And then there's a colon symbol. And the last four numbers are your port numbers. So it's going to connect to Perseus. And then you'll see a screen I'm about to show you. The Tomian group, who is made up of Kevin, Oskari, and Omeyer. And Oskari's probably thinking, well, I'm really on St. Croix. Kind of balanced it up a little bit. So for the purposes of this activity, I made Oskari a member of the Tomian group. And today I'm actually going to demonstrate using Oskari's login. We'll use a system called Virgo. They'll connect through the same IP address, but they'll use a slightly different port number to connect to Virgo. Is there any questions about what I've explained so far? All right.
No.
Okay. So the other thing that I wanted to share with you is that when you connect to this screen, you're going to use your first initial and your last name as a login. So just use your first initial and your last name. If your last name is hyphenated or not hyphenated, but it's a two-part last name, whether it uses a hyphen or not, just have the first initial and then your last name or both last names. In Oskari's case, his last name is Lopez Almonte. And so he'll just have O Lopez Almonte as a login. And his password, your password, will all share the same initial characters. The word remote, spelled with a capital R, and the O, the lowercase o, is replaced with the number 0. That word is followed by a dash, and then the XXXX that you see here, these are the last 4 characters of your own student ID number. So I'm not going to show that here, but I do know Omari's, not Omeyer's, but Oskari's, the last 4 of his student ID, And so what I'm going to do is test the access to make sure it's working before the class is over, and everybody will have a chance to log in. Once you're connected, okay, that said couldn't connect because I'm already connected another way here. For the demo, I'm working this way. So stand by. Essentially, what you're going to find when you log into your machine is that a directory directory's been configured for the class. So you'll see a directory in the C drive, and in this case, it'll say OS_best_practices. And inside that directory are two subdirectories, Crucian and Tomian. So if you're a member of the Tomian group, and I'm using Oskari's login right now, so if you see he's logged in, basically Oskari has permissions to connect to his directory, and he's also got a share set up so that he has permission to connect to his directory. And in each case, when the directories are shared, they're shared with a $sign to hide them. And if you look at the permissions, each person in our class has their own home directory or H directory. And inside your own home directory, you have the right to change or modify things. And then inside each Tomian directory, if you're a member of the Tomian group or a member of the Crucian group, you can connect to that. This is a directory that becomes your G drive or group drive for the campus group, right? And then there's also an O drive for OS best practices. So since this is a course about operating system, we'll choose to use the drive letter O. Are there any questions about how we've set up the resources for each student so far?
No, all right, nope.
So everybody can see that in each group, we already have permissions set up, right? Okay. So what I'm going to do next is explain how it is we want you to complete the final assignment. So what you're going to do is show a successful connection to the O drive, the G drive, and the H drive with a proper net use command, right? So you're going to take advantage of the net utility and use it with the option use to connect with a command. And so we want you to do this independently for each of those three drives. And what I'll do is take care of those probably with the G drive first, and then the home directory for Oskari, and then the class drive for OS best practices, right? With each of those, with each of those commands, when you're successful, you'll be able to navigate into those drive letters. And you may or may not see it in File Explorer, but those connections will be in place. And then what we'll want you to do is to log out, but save, if those commands work, we want you to save them in a notepad, a text file in your own directory, because after you log out and log back in again, you'll build what's called a batch file to combine all three of those. And if you save it with a .bat extension, you can run it as needed, or you can set it up so that it automatically loads whenever you log in anywhere. And that's really powerful. So the batch file setup is worth 1 point. The two drive commands are worth 2 points. And so now what I'd like to do is demonstrate on behalf of Oskari how this would work on his system, okay? Is everybody with me?
Yep.
So the first thing I'm going to do as Oskari is navigate to the CMD option and run it as administrator. And each of you should be able to do that. If you can't do that, that's a sure sign that something is wrong. Now, we did say that Oskari, Kevin, and Omeyer are going to be using Virgo. So that's an important piece of information. If you're in the Crucian group, you're going to substitute the server name Perseus. So having named resources on this network and a domain environment is actually very beneficial, okay? If we look at your study guide, it talks about how you use this powerful feature, right? And this is basically the command, right? So you're going to put in the file server name and then the department name, and you'll follow that with a /persistent:\no, so that after somebody logs out, the network drive does not remain connected in that system, okay? Does everybody understand what I'm saying? We don't want network shared directories or drives that are mapped to a system to stay in place after someone logs out. So we're going to use that command, okay? So let me increase the size of this just so it's a little larger. Let's do this. Is that easier to see for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So I am demonstrating using Oskari's login, and I'm going to use the netuse command, and I'm going to connect the G drive first. And Oskari is a member of the Tomian group. So I'm going to say netuse G for the group directory. And then I'm going to use 2 backslashes. Now these aren't forward slashes, but they're backslashes, and it's how you begin the server name. So the server name we said was what? Perseus or Virgo?
For who? St. Thomas?
For the Tomians.
Virgo.
Yeah, we said it was Virgo. So I'm going to use the fully qualified domain name instead of just the simple name. I'm going to say virgo.groovy.local. And then I'm also going to put the share name down. So when I created the Tomian share name, in another class, we were already demonstrating this idea of Crucian Tomian. That name's already taken up. So one thing you might have noticed is that it was Tomian 2, right? So I've created a second Tomian share name for a different class. And that's what I have with the $sign. And so if I look at the specifics, and I look at my Tomian properties for sharing, that's what I have. I have Tomian 2 $sign, and the Tomians can connect to it to read what's in there, right? So I'm going to hit enter, but first I'm going to put in a space and then a /, the word persistent, and then the word no. Now, if the permissions were in place properly, I should be able to go to this directory, this drive letter, because what I've done is created a new drive letter. It's called mapping a drive letter. You can do this in the GUI as well. If you were to refresh Virgo, you might see the G drive or you might not. That's one aspect of sharing network resources that has changed. Used to be that if you executed a G drive here and then just refreshed, you would see the G drive appear. But how do you know that actually worked and was successful? Well, if you issue the command to change to the G drive, now you have a G drive letter. And if I want to see what's listed in there, oh, look, I see the 3 directories. O Lopez Almonte, Kevin Monsanto, and Omair Shalom, right? So all 3 Tomian directories, home directories, are inside the Tomian group, right? Any questions so far, right? So this is the snapshot that you're going to capture. This is one of 3 snapshots you're going to capture for the first part. Okay, so we've just done the G drive. Now we're going to do the H drive. I'm going to connect the H drive and then show you something in the H drive. And in order to make a believer of you, I think what I'm going to do here, inside this directory, if I'm truly Oscari Lopez Almonte, I should be able to put something in here, like a text document that says punchbuggy.txt, and I'll say Lilo and Stitch, right? Punch Buggy, Lilo and Stitch, Disney movie. I'm making up something completely random. I was able to save that change, right? Everybody sees that?
Yeah. Quick question. I completely forgot to ask this at the very beginning. We're doing this on our host machine or the VM?
You're doing it on either the host machine or the VM.
Oh, okay.
You should try it first on the host machine.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
More stable, right?
Yep. And you've already captured this screen for the first part, the first of 3 network maps that we're doing for part 1. So I'm going to go back to the C drive, and I'm going to issue the same command, only I'm going to change it a little. So I'm going to use my up arrow to go faster, and this time I'm going to change it to an H drive. Does everybody see what I'm doing here? Save some keystrokes. Hope this thing gets working. My home directory isn't a group directory. It's my actual, it matches my actual login name. My first initial, in this case, Oscari Lopez Almonte, with a $sign. Does everybody see that?
Yes, yes.
And now what do I do to make sure that it's working right? How do I navigate to the H drive? I put in H : and hit enter. And if I want to see a directory, oh, look.
Right, I was looking for the commands, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So all I have to do is pull a directory, and now I have drive letter H. I'm going to highlight this. I have something unique that's in there, right? Punchbuggy.txt. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to capture this screen, and that's part 2 of that first step, right? So that's the second action that I take to create that drive letter. And the last thing I'm going to do is connect to the course directory, so I can see everything that's in this resource for the course, OS best practices. So I'll go back to my machine. I'll return to the C drive. I'll actually put in CLS just to clear the screen. CLS is clear screen. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my up arrow key again. And this time I'm going to enter the detail for drive letter O. So here's drive letter O. And instead of the home directory or the group directory, I'm going to enter the OS best practices directory. You see the pattern here. Same
Yeah.
basic command, different drive letter. For whatever purpose you decide to use which drive letter, O for OS, operating systems, G for group, H for home, for a user, right? The server name after the double backslash, then the share name after the single slash. Always share something with a $sign so that it's hidden on the network. I'm going to hit O, I'm going to hit enter. And it says the command completed successfully. What do I enter next to get into the O drive?
O then colon, right? Or is it O colon backslash?
No, it's O colon, but you could put backslash as well. It wouldn't matter if you did. And now I'm going to issue the directory command. And here you see the Crucian directory and the Tomian directory. So this is the last of the 3 criteria that you need to submit for step 1.
So now when we do this, let's say, so remember I don't remember which assignment this was. I don't know, I think it was like in 2 dash, I think it was assignment in module 2. The one where we had to connect to the VM's
Share.
share drive, right?
Yes, yes.
Could we do that as well, or is that unless we would need to know like the username and password and stuff like that? So we wouldn't actually be able to do that.
You've anticipated your own answer. The short answer is yes. In the previous exercise, we were only working in a work group environment that did not have the consolidated or enterprise management of security accounts, right? So when we have an Active Directory domain and we create a domain with a small network, we've centralized the management of all of those accounts. And because I pre-configured all of the user accounts for you, it becomes a very easy thing to support, right? You have projects that have to be, or departments that have to share resources. You have users in each of those departments, and then you might have divisions or whatever. In this case, we've just decided to use the class convention, but because this command pulls from Virgo, the cool part is when I log in from anywhere on any machine, anywhere in the domain, it's going to automatically, if I have a batch file connected with my login, it's automatically going to restore those drive connections. And as long as I back up Virgo, the file server, every night, I keep everybody's individual data, I keep their group, the group data and information, and I keep the larger intact. So you can do similar things, but you do have to know the login and password on the local machine in order to make it work if you're going to use your VM on the local host, okay? So you could do this on the local host to connect to your virtual machine share, but you'd have to know the name of the virtual machine, and you'd have to be sure to include the permissions, right? The login and password. There's actually a switch that you can use to incorporate that in your netuse command. So it'll use a certain username and then a password. It's pretty cool. Did that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, certainly did.
Okay. All right. So this is the last of the 3 that you capture for step 1 in the assignment. So now I have 3 different screen captures, one showing the G drive successfully connected, the H drive successfully connected from my own home directory, and the O drive for OS best practices, a class directory, right? And to me, they're just different drive letters. Now what I want to do is log out and log in again. So I want to save those commands from step 1 in a notepad text file and then log out and log in. So this is what it would look like. I have successively worked through 3 different commands. This one first for the G drive. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
So all I did was use my up arrow, and I'm going to press Control C. And now in my own folder, inside my own folder, I'm going to keep a drive map. We'll call this a drive map script, right? Drive map script content. So that's my first one. This is actually going to save you some steps, okay? It's actually going to save you some steps. And then I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to go to my next command for the H drive. And since that was correct and it worked properly, I'm going to highlight that, hold down the Control key and tap the letter C again, and paste this into the second line. Okay. And then I'm going to do the last one. The O drive. So everybody see what I'm doing here?
Yes.
So now that I have all 3 of those, I'm just going to save that. And I can convert that into a script. It's a login script, right? And I can actually use my name, my login account name, and save it with a .bat extension. I'll show you that in just a moment after I go ahead and save this. So I can close this, and I'm going to go ahead and log out because I don't want these drive associations to persist. If they're in place and I try to issue the command and it's already connected, I could get an error. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm going to sign out as Oscari. And now I'm actually going to use the Virgo remote connection and log in the other way. So I'm going to go ahead and let me see if I can actually demonstrate using that remote connection. I'll go ahead and drop Virgo, and I'm going to minimize this for now. Actually, I'm going to do this a little more. I better not. I better leave that active just in case we have a problem. All right, so I'm going to go to my remote desktop app. I've already got Virgo previously configured. I'm going to attempt to connect. That's going to prompt me for my name, and I'm going to use my first initial. And again, I'm borrowing Oscari's, right? So Lopez Almonte is his last name. And I'm going to enter the password using the word remote, like we just said, where I substitute. Could I substitute the number? Oh, no, I didn't. Got to use a 0. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Then I'm going to enter his last 4 student ID numbers, and I'll connect. And voila. I'm now back inside my remote system. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate if I go into my CMD command prompt and I run as administrator, what you'll find is that my G drive, my H drive, my O drive, they didn't stay in place because I logged out, and that's correct. I don't want those intact. If I've checked off the system, I don't want those connections open for someone else. That's a security problem, right? But I also want an easy button. I want to be able to create a simple command that allows me to execute all three of those as a login script. So I'm going to navigate to my folder where I have this, and I'm going to convert this. I'm going to save it as, I'll put it in the temp folder of the C drive. If you get an error message or you get a pop-up like this, just hit continue and you should be fine. I'm going to create a file name that looks just like my user login account. So it's going to be O Lopez Almonte. In your case, you'd have your first initial and last name. And instead of saving it with a .txt file, I'm going to put a .bat. Does everybody see what I just did there?
Yep.
Now, if this is a batch file, it's considered a best practice to add a few things. One of the common practices is, especially for login scripts, you don't want all of that stuff to be flashing on the screen when somebody logs in. So you enter the command @echo off. Okay, does everybody see what I'm doing here? @echo off. And that
Yeah.
way, when each command executes, it's not going to be taking up a black screen. Users get really freaked out when they see like stuff executing on the screen. And if it's happening across the network, sometimes it can be a little slow. But I'm going to go ahead and make sure that at the end of the last line and the last character, I'm going to hit enter one more time. That's because if this script executes, I want that last line to execute. And if I don't have a new line there, sometimes it gets stuck. So that's another thing I'm going to do for this batch file. Any questions so far? All I did was take my original content from each of those three commands, add the @echo off, and then enter an extra line, right? I'm going to save this. And if I go to my temp folder, what I want to do is view the extensions to make sure I don't have a .bat.txt. The extension needs to say only .bat. So I'm going to make sure that that instead of having a .bat.txt, sometimes Notepad likes to add .txt to the end of our file names, and if it'll do that sometimes, it'll put .bat.txt because you were a Notepad, and you want to make sure that Notepad is behaving. Does everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now you notice the icon has changed. See how the icon has changed? It's still a text file, but it looks different, doesn't it? That's another thing that tells you, and this is actually a technique of hackers. They like embedding like the reverse of that. They'll put a .txt and then they'll put a BAT, and they'll try to hide the fact that it's an executable and it's a script. And so they try to play games with the file extensions, which is why I always like to view the file extensions. Okay. Now, if this is working right, I should be able to run as administrator. I can't run as administrator this way if it's a .txt. But if it's named correctly, the icon itself will look different. And I will be able to execute it as an administrator. Any questions? It's going to say, do you want to run this? I say yes. Did everybody see the screen flash? Just for a moment.
Yeah.
So what happens now if I repeat my command to connect to the G drive? Oh. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Flawless. Does everybody see what happened there? So what you want to show is this first result where it's not working. And then you also want to open up this file in edit mode so that we can see that you've done the best practice here with @echo_off, and it shows the name of the batch file, okay? And you can execute from the command prompt. The important thing is that I can use this batch file now in a separate window, so it loads every time I log in. And that's important because I can also include a command like this. And that would make sure that policies refresh every time I log in, my policies refresh the security policies that protect my system, right? Does everybody understand what I'm showing here?
Yeah.
So you can do a lot of extra things for maintenance and to update your system automatically when people log in or log off. You can set it up as a login script or a log off script. And you can configure that so that it loads automatically and that they have those resources automatically. That's the cool part about how scripting will work. So if you have this screen showing where it's clear that the drive letters didn't execute after you logged back in, but then you have this and you've double clicked it, right? To load it, to launch it. If you have this information on your screen, you can capture this. And that is the last thing that you need to turn in for this assignment. So it shows the batch file that you created using the statements. It shows that you have run it and you capture the end result. And that's what you have to do for this final activity. Again, the study guide and the addendum are straightforward. I will post a smaller assessment, fewer questions, same value, 5 points, right? So as we finish off our OS best practices course, I wanted to give you a chance to try on some scripting and automation on a very light level so you get a chance to see how it works. And I wanted you to do that in a domain environment where if you're logging into any system in this space, any system at all, you know, the University of the Virgin Islands has conservatively 250 systems on both campuses. And so students' work, their project files, the important degree program files, everything could follow them no matter where they are. No thumb drives, right? Everything all together, everything backed up every night, no possibility for data corruption. This is how Fortune 500 and governments work. So this concludes our demo. Are there any questions, comments, concerns before we clear for the day? So one,
No comments about the material you just went over, but I would like to inform you that I couldn't do the assessment this weekend because I was in the hospital.
oh my, okay. Well, we'll go ahead and open that back up. I'm glad you brought up the term assessment. The final exam will be available at the official, according to the official schedule that UVI puts out. So on a given day, not this week, but next week during finals week, we'll post the final exam. Until then, you have a chance to resubmit assignments or solutions. If you have not yet reconciled your assessment, your module assessments, your first attempt, if you have not yet engaged the retake, the final version of those assessments, that's an excellent way to prepare for the final exam. So I'll remain available to assist as needed. I just wanted to wish all of you well on your final exam and the closeout of the season. And if you're on St. Thomas, enjoy Carnival sensibly, so you have some brain cells left after the Carnival for exam week, right? So in any case, let me know if there's anything we can assist with, and that's it for our final session.